Here is one of a series of talks by spiritual leader Lola McDowell Lee, spanning 2 decades from the early 70s through the 90s. Lola was a Zen Roshi, whose Rinzai lineage included Dr. Henry Platov and renowned Zen master Shigetsu Sasaki. Lola was a religious scholar as well as an ordained Christian minister. While the talks are focused mainly on Zen and Buddhism, Lola drew on many spiritual traditions, including those of Jesus, Plato, Lao Tzu, the Hindu Vedas, Meister Eckhart, and Gurdjieff.
Well, I'm continuing with these Sufis of India called the Bowls. Because they do follow mostly the Samkhya Yoga, and there are some things in Samkhya Yoga I would like to point out to you as being necessary for you to observe. And it's as neat a way as any to do it, you know. So their little ditty, the little song, one of the songs that they sing, because they make music. They have lots of music and dancing, like the Sufis, you know, and they write poetry. Very free-spirited. Nothing has happened, and nothing will happen. What is there is there. I became a king in my dreams, and my subjects occupied the entire world. I sat on a throne, ruling like a lion, living a happy life, and the world obeyed me. As I turned in my bed, all was clear. I was not a lion. I was a lion's uncle, a jackass, the village idiot. You know, it reminds me of Chuang Tzu, you know. He took a nap one afternoon under a tree, and his students were clustered around in little groups, and at a distance from him, you know. And they were observing him, and they could see that something was happening to him. So when he awakened, they asked him what had occurred. And Chuang Tzu said, Chuang Tzu, dreamed I was a butterfly flutting about. I did whatever I wished. I knew nothing about any Chuang Tzu. Then I suddenly awakened, and Chuang Tzu, with all his normal trappings, was here. Now I don't know whether Chuang Tzu dreamed he was a butterfly or a butterfly is dreaming that he is Chuang Tzu. So there must be a difference between a Chuang Tzu and a butterfly. And that is what is meant when we say that things undergo transformation. Now, is Chuang Tzu dreaming he was a butterfly, or is a butterfly dreaming he was a Chuang Tzu? And be careful what you do with this butterfly. See, the transformation of consciousness is what we are about. The transformation of consciousness. So what is this butterfly? What is real? The butterfly flitting or Chuang Tzu? What is real? In some of the teachings, I guess you could call them esoteric teachings, Eastern teachings, they have this analogy of the caterpillar and the butterfly, that we are like a caterpillar. And we have around us all this cocoon in which we hide. And now, out of that, this that was the caterpillar must break out and transcend this cocoon and be a butterfly. Yeah. You've heard it, some of you have heard it many times. Now, the Samkhya Yoga, which Kapila took out of the Vedas, and it is very, very old. And a great deal of what is taught in India at all is based on Samkhya Yoga. And Samkhya mentions the a kind of a waking state, which is called our normal activity. It is our objective self-consciousness. And it also speaks of a state where consciousness is interiorized. So we have the dreams, and then this slips into a deep sleep type of a thing. And Shankaracharya, one of India's great, great teachers of Advaita, of non-dualism in the Vedanta, they have both. He speaks a great deal, Shankarya does. He wrote, because he lived back 700 and something, about these sleeping and dreaming and waking states. Then, and as the Baals talk about it, there is another state, and they call it Sahaja. Which they say is the awakened consciousness. Now, this is no longer objectively self-conscious. It is an awakened consciousness, which has within itself, it contains the dreaming, sleeping, and objective self-conscious states. Waking contains all three of these. I mean, it must. We couldn't function anymore if we were awake, if we didn't still have our faculties. How would you eat? How would you sleep? Yeah, so we still function. I mean, they do. Now, in this Sahaja, according to the Samkhya, you being the disciple, you're faced now with a task in the realm of sensation. Now, last week I brought up a particular point in the Samkhya thing, which you were to observe. I wonder if anybody even remembers what I said as that point. Anyway, now this task in the realm of sensation. We have been talking about observing. Now we're going to talk about to forget oneself. And this is very, very subtle, and it's very difficult. And this is the other end of the stick of self-observation now. It's to forget, self-forget. Voluntarily forgetting oneself. And that's just as difficult as trying to accustom the mind, this mental faculty of ours, to remembering details of self-observation. I mean, to train the mind to be observing is difficult. Then one goes to this training of the mind of voluntarily self-forgetting. Now, two ends of one stick. Now, in this Sahaja and this voluntary letting go, you know, it's like there is a kind of a tension. There is an attention. And one holds an attention, but it seems to come, as they say in Zen, you know, from a faraway place. That is, it transcends our ordinary attention. It's not that you actually sit here and hold this attention. Something is holding the attention. Something is in the background here is holding an attention. And this attention is self-observation. You know, we're here until little by little we bring it in so that we can go deeper and deeper into this observation. And then you see there comes this attention now that we have developed, and it sits in the background, and it doesn't care what you do. It is totally indifferent to what is going on. And yet it watches very closely. It watches like a mouse, like a cat sitting in a little mouse hole. No, it watches all the time. But it has no judgment. It gives no orders. See? It is not the slightest bit impatient. Impatience is yours, you know. Objective self. It simply watches. See, and it watches what Samkhya calls Prakrit, see, which is the nature of things. See, the movements of energy, the nature of things. Into this voluntary self-forgetting. See, you're watching movements now. You're not watching yourself. You've been observing yourself. Now you're not observing the self. You're forgetting the self and watching movement. It's a letting go of self. And so one can observe the emotions. See, one can observe any emotion that comes from the heart and the mind. And after a while, it becomes like an empty. But it is like at the same time, it is a vibrating bell. And it's filled with a sound coming from somewhere. There's a resonance, in other words. In this self-forgetting part of it, one learns to accept that we have this 24 hours, this day in which to live. So if this is what I have, then let this be filled with clarity. Do not allow these hours, this day, to be tarnished. The clarity will help you do what you need to do. Do not try to stretch out time, and don't try to divide it. Don't try to lengthen it, and don't try to shorten it. Everything is so full now. And at the same time, it is so empty now. Both. It's discipline. People think they know what discipline is. I'm trying to point out some things that maybe you don't know all about it. It's about discipline. Now, the discipline of Sahaja begins with the accepting of the whole life just as it is. And the aim of this whole life is to attain this pure existence. So, we read in the Upanishad, he who has realized this, that's the pure existence, has a clear understanding of what reality is. Pure existence is the truth beyond life and death. That you exist is a fact. And your existence is the manifestation of that which is universal and transcendental. That's been said many, many ways, other ways. Yeah. And then Samkhya goes on to say, existence is one. Well, it's in there somewhere, one. And in this one, there are the two principles of Samkhya. There is the Purusha, which is the essence or the spirit, and there is the Prakrit, which is the great mother. See, she is the mother of all that which is manifested. So one opens oneself to this pure existence, and this truth of it will flow into you. Doing it all the time. We don't pay any attention. Our impatience spoils a lot of things. The Baals sing, they have this little song, the stars, the suns, the moons are never impatient. Silently, they follow the stream of pure existence. Yeah. Now, as a general rule, Samkhya is thought of as a dualistic presentation. Because when Purusha finally extricates himself from Prakrit, then you think you've reached the top, and they come along and say, no, now there's Mahapurusha and Mahaprakrit. Now do it over again. See? So they have made out of it a kind of a quasi dualism by saying that there's the one that contains the two, but that one in Samkhya is pretty hard to find. But this thing that Purusha, the spirit or the essence, of yourself, it's you. Mm-hmm. You have to extricate yourself from Prakrit. And the old biblical admonition, come ye out from among them and be ye therefore separate. They're speaking of Purusha. Now, in the Baal system of the Samkhya Yoga, Sahaja, which is an awakening, not as we call it awakening, we wake up in the morning, but that's not that kind of awakening. Something else wakens inside, huh? Now, this is a state that is free of all duality. And it is a path, then, that leads to the discovery of that which we call that, with which you are born, which is called sometimes the pure being living in the heart, that which is born in you and that which is born with you, pure essence. The body, the spirit, the impulse of life, the intelligence of life, all are here now. Nothing must be rejected or mutilated, so that this Sahaja can be consciously established. So one holds fast in the focus of attention, either in self-observation or self-forgetting. Nothing has happened and nothing will happen. What is there is there. Reality remains as it is, such as it is. In its suchness, it remains what it is. But we see lots of changes. We change, and everything around us seems to be changing. See, this phenomenal life is change. You know, as Heraclitus said, you cannot step into the same river twice. Now, is he talking about the river, or is he talking about you? You cannot step into the same river twice. So much is happening. And yet nothing has happened. Now, this is something that the mind cannot reconcile. You can't think. You can't put all that many jigs together to get a complete picture. The mind cannot. See? But you can know that nothing has happened without any conflict. So that you can say on this hand yes, and on the other hand no. Just as Chuang Tzu could know himself as a man with all his trappings, or as a butterfly. The two ends of a stick always to be realized. You realize one, you've got to know the other also. Because, you know, the old saying, how do you pick up one end of a stick? Just one end. How do you pick up one end of a stick? Well, you know, if we have a little small room, like a little room in here, and there's a candle burning in there, and, you know, the fan is on, so the candle flickers. And because the candle flame flickers, changes come about. The shadows move. So that in a way it seems like the room is moving. The shadows are moving. Yeah. If the flame is constant and it doesn't flicker at all the shadows stop changing. They're constant. Now, if consciousness is held very steady, if consciousness, and they speak of consciousness as the flame of consciousness, consciousness is held very steady, the unflickering flame, then you will see nothing happening. But consciousness, it moves with the sensation, It moves with the sense of touch. It moves with what you're hearing. It moves into the smell. It moves into the sight. It moves with our feelings. It moves with the mind. And some people call this movement the illusion, and they say, therefore, we live in an illusory world. It is a mirage world by this movement of consciousness into wherever. And so our thinking mind knows the world of change. And this is the basis of the concept of Maya. I mean, we live in Maya, the illusory world. Maya doesn't mean that there's no reality or that reality is not real. And it doesn't say that our existence is a dream. It simply says that the way you look at it is so wavering, so unaware, so without consciousness. So you watch your thinking. The mind has great difficulty being constant. You know, it's like monkeys in a tree, these thoughts. You watch them. They go just that fast. So there comes the difficulty in holding a focus when you sit. Or even a focus when you're walking down the street. It's even more difficult, huh? But a focus properly held, it shuts out the thinking. It shuts out all that flickering and waving and moving. And to hold a good, strong focus of attention takes a lot of discipline. One of these days when you've got some time and you think you have a pretty good focus of attention, you look at your watch. You look at your watch. And the whole time you are looking at your watch, you must remember that you are looking at your watch. And it's amazing how boring that gets almost immediately, to remember that you're looking at your watch. The thinking slips away somewhere else, you know. It's all of a sudden hooked on some memory that, some watches. Now, here we go. I remember this is a watch. I'm watching my watch. And the hand is going around, and, I wonder if the other watch I had a hand, you see? Or the watch that I'm going to get, maybe I must be sure it has a second hand. And we were going on about watches, and pretty soon we're off into something else. Some imagination, some memory, some work we have completed, some work that we have left uncompleted. We've got some worry, or we've got some plan, some place we'd like to be, some place we feel we should be. And all of a sudden, the watch. So you try it again. And again the thinking goes away, flips out, goes on its own. It's like you have no control of it whatsoever. To have a stable mind, the thinking mind, to have it very stable really isn't quite in its nature. You have got to hold it stable. The thinking isn't going to hold stable, Now, and the way to be stable, and we're talking about meditation, the Zazen, is to drop the mind, drop the thinking, ignore it, so that you can look into reality without any thinking, just to look directly into reality. And it's so immediate, it's so very present. This whole other world is suddenly revealed, immediately, directly. And you will see that nothing has happened and nothing will happen. What is there is there. We come and go. Many people, when they start out with this Zazen, this practice of meditation, they do it incorrectly. They begin to fight with the thinking, and they're struggling with it, and they're wrestling with it, and they're fighting with it. Then they're fighting a losing battle. There's always going to be more thoughts than you can ever imagine floating by. So one should be about the business of finding out what is hidden in the unconscious. Mainly our desiring, which gives us our motivations. And a lot of this is in the unconscious. Many people have a desire to be someone important, or at least more important than I am now. Or they have a desire to be somewhere else. And they want this, and they want that, and they want in, and then they want out. That's pretty typical. Yeah. Like the little girl that was next door. She was outside. She was visiting her grandparents, about like Eric there, pounding on the door. Let me in, let me in, let me in. Father says, okay. The grandfather, he lets her in, And and she wants out. So she gets outside, and she's pounding on the door again. Let me out, let me out, let me out. He says, you are. She just wants, you see. That's how we are. We want. So now, how to stop all of this? You've all figured out a way how to stop all of this. It's very simple. Simple, huh? Just be here now. Be here now. Just accept what you are now. Of course, you know, every day we go out there and we're dealing with the world and we're trying to better ourselves. We can help ourselves do this by our observing ourselves and others. And then while sitting, you drop this idea of improvement. You just pay attention. You drop all the ideas of greatness, of acquiring this and that and the other, because empty-handed, you know, we came, and empty-handed we will go. And in the meanwhile, empty-handed we remain, whether we know it or not. If you've got full hands, if your hands are full of stuff, your hands are full of dreams and fantasies. Yeah? There is, you know, like, and David could talk about it to some extent, I think, karate, Japanese discipline, which comes from the root, the word comes from the root empty hand. And like in Tai Chi, why we have, again, the Chi is the empty hand. Empty hand. And a man can become a very great warrior if he understands the meaning of this being empty, empty hand, empty. If I am empty, I have nothing to lose, do I? If I have nothing to lose, who can overcome me? What is there to frighten me? It's not possible to defeat such a one, to rob him, or to kill him. He's empty. He holds nothing in his hands. And by not holding, he can go beyond life and death. We clutch. You know, there's a story of this little monk who lived in a little hut outside the village, and one night he was disturbed because there was a thief in the house. And the thief was going through everything, and he couldn't find anything to steal. I mean, the monk was very poor. So finally the monk got up and gave him the cover from his bed and said, here, you take this. Evidently you need it more than I do. And the thief left rather chagrined. And later on the police picked him up. And he was put in jail, and the little monk heard about it. And he went down, he says, but he didn't steal the cover. I gave it to him. But they had a lot of other things against this man, so he went to jail. But after he got out, he came back to this little monk and became his disciple. And you know, Jesus said something to this effect. Those who try to save their lives will lose. Those who lose themselves will save their lives. Yeah. Losers become winners, and winners become losers. Yeah. Those who are empty will be fulfilled, and those who are trying to fulfill will remain empty. Now, this is a very strange paradox that he talks about. But nothing will happen. Nothing has happened. Yeah. Nothing has happened. Reality as it is has been here since the beginningless beginning. And our whole effort is to make something happen. And this is the becoming. We are the activity. We are the becoming of being. Being doesn't change. Beingness is beingness. Look at your life from your childhood, from the way back to the first time you can remember until now. What has happened? Whew. Wow, what hasn't happened, huh? Yeah. Many things appear to have happened, but what has really happened? You're the same. If you look at yourself, you're the same. Aren't you? You're the same. The consciousness remains the same. So in a way, we kind of walk for a while through this life, in a manner of speaking, with 1 foot in 2 camps. Yeah. We have the search for reality, and the search, we have the search for material betterment, within which we search for reality. 2 feet, 2 camps. You got to bring them together. The search for reality is that which allows consciousness to evolve. I mean, that, to come to a point where it will wake up. Wake up, that's right. You tell him, Eric. Each state in this Prakrit, this great mother, from the algae to the oyster, sleeping consciousness, to the plant, to the animal dreaming, to man mostly dreaming. But now consciousness has the possibility of awakening for the first time in this overall evolution. It is consciousness that evolves. Unless you attain a greater awareness, they say in the Eastern tradition, you will never know what reality is or what God is. So there comes with this Zazen, a moment arrives, and there is this being. And it is as if this being is filled with light because of the awakened consciousness. There is no dreaming in that moment. It is just the very stuff you are made of, being. And in this moment you will come to know what the Baal is singing. Nothing has happened and nothing will happen. What is there is there. And there's no contradiction. Because you're not thinking. You're being. And there's a difference. We watch people going down the street. You watch them, they're talking to themselves, and they make these gestures. They're talking to somebody. Surely they're not talking to themselves. No, there's nobody there. They drive by in cars, they're on the freeway, you can sure see it, But some once in a while now, they got a book propped up there and they're reading going 70 miles an hour down the freeway, and I don't see how they do that. But all this talking going on, you see, this is, it's called a state of being drunk with dreams. They're not aware. They're talking. They're messing around in the mind with these irritations in the mind, So one watches this. So first you watch others, naturally. Naturally. It's much easier. You watch others. But then little by little you begin to watch yourself, what you're doing. And you start catching yourself red-handed at some of these things that are kind of no-nos, And sometimes you just walk along you're walking along and stop, just stop, immediately stop, and ask yourself, are you here? Or are you just moving somewhere off into some space in some kind of a dream? Are you here? I mean, even right now, are you here? I don't think so. See, the more you become alert, the more that you can see some of the gaps between the dreams. And, in these gaps, and reality can be approached. But I'll tell you something else. One reason why they're so difficult to give up is because you have such investment in them. You've invested your time. You've invested yourself. We may be afraid of having nightmares, but by golly, we're not yet fed up enough with the dreams. Not yet. And speaking of dreams, a man was talking to one of his friends, and he was going on about, and he says, I had a dream the other night, and it taught me a great lesson. See, we can learn from dreams. So the friend asked, well, what was it? Well, said Casey, I dreamed I was in Rome and I had an audience with the Pope. And he asked me, would I have a drink? Well, would a duck swim? And seeing the whiskey and the lemons and the sugar over there on the sideboard, I told him I wouldn't mind a drop of punch. Cold or hot, he asked me. Hot, Your Holiness, said I, and that's where I made me mistake. Yeah? Well, I don't see anything wrong with that, says his friend. Well, His Holiness stepped toward the kitchen to boil the water, and before he got back, I woke up. So this friend says, and what lesson did you learn? See? You don't even know a punchline. The next time this Casey swears up and down, I will say, I will take it cold while Your Holiness is heating the water. He learned a lesson, huh? We invest in dreamings. It teaches us lessons. But the thing is, they do not exist without our help. Yeah. We have sweet dreams. We have golden dreams, we have romantic dreams, we have impressive dreams, we have futuristic dreams, and we court them. We plan and we court it, oh, come to me, and then we sit there with our frustration. Yeah. See, they don't really bring fulfillment. You've already got another desire going. Or 5. See? Our dreams are, our fantasies. And they're not real. Our thoughts are not real. Reality real. And our desires can be realized for a little bitty time, and then here comes the frustration again. And the thing is, if you'll watch what you're thinking about in the way of projecting, it's mostly all about the future, what you're going to do in the future. And it's very difficult to drop, because the minute you drop your future hopes for the future, you suddenly become more aware of what's going on today. See, so some of the dreams are escape mechanisms. When you drop tomorrow's dream, you're not suddenly happy, because all of a sudden you're stuck now with facing today's misery, which was the crop from the seed that you sowed back then of some time ago's desire. So you got to live through it. If you sow a seed, you reap the crop. Yep. So this has to be gone through, all this frustration. And in India it is called tapas. It's a discipline. It's an austerity. So you try as best you can to drop tomorrow's dream. It is enough for you to take care of today. Today. Here now. When your eyes are full of dreams, you cannot be aware. When your eyes are not full of dreams, then your eyes are full of awareness. Mm-hmm. So then I have also to tell you the other story about these kind of dreams and awareness. And this is the story of McGonagall instead of Casey, so it's quite different. And he was staggering, see, from street post to lamp post and back again, and then down and then back, see. And in Ireland they do have these lamp posts, and I have seen him staggering from one to the other and happy as a lark when they're there. You know. Anyway, Father Daly stopped this man and said to him, "Drunk again?" "Are you?" said McGonagall. "So am I, Father." "This is no time for levity," admonished the priest. "After taking the pledge and promising me 2 weeks ago that you would never drink again, and it is, as you know, a sin against God and the church, and I'm sorry to be saying so." "Are you sorry?" "Indeed I am." "Are you sure you are sorry?" "Yes, very, very sorry." "Well, if you are so sorry," said McGonagall, "I will forgive you, Father." Oh, dear. We get things all gollicked up, don't we? Anyway. Sahaja. This discipline of Sahaja, it begins with the accepting of life as it is. The ups and the downs and the ins and the outs. Now, those who practice what are called spiritual disciplines, the austerities, the meditation and all that goes with it, the observations and the letting go, they learn to look at the movements of Prakrit in all her movements without interfering. See? And which is, Zen says quite simply, you know, a long thing is not short and a green thing is not yellow. Why should I interfere? Yeah. To perceive the ability of Prakrit in her movement, see, in the becoming, and the becoming, and the becoming, and the becoming. See. She becomes the form of one state, then she becomes the form of another state, and she becomes the form of another state, and she becomes the form of another state. Her movements, she accommodates herself to the form of consciousness. She accommodates her forms, she accommodates to consciousness, to states of consciousness, to the light within. She moves, you know, from the oyster to the plant, to the animal, to man, always a form. And she accommodates, no, you know, forms are different. And then one steps out of and away from Prakrit, and she no longer has a form to give you. You know. Have you ever watched the ocean? Just to sit and watch the ocean. There is a movement in it, and the colors very slowly change. And you watch it long enough and you begin to feel the rhythm of it, and then you feel that you're part of the rhythm of it. And within yourself, you know, you can experience this recurring movement of time. And you can experience the universe itself in this movement. See, in this egoless, impersonal manifestation, and it becomes the reality. See? And all the indecencies and the injustices and the pleasures and the tragedies and the comedies of all individuals, are not really important. Not in that instant. And then having watched something like this, and make a samkhya with it, to become one with it, then the disciple turns his perceptions upon himself. Finally, we're going to do it. And he discovers all these inner disturbances. I like, I don't like, I want, I don't want. Right? Wrong. Very subtle, some of this. See? But they do get in the way of really observing. You get caught in what you think of I want and I don't want. See? And it gets in your way of the ongoing. So how to disassociate yourself from this Prakrit to this lone Purusha? This Purusha, there and there, he am I. Well, Samkhya then turns to Raja Yoga, which of course is Zazen. It's the meeting of the heart and the mind. It's Zen meditation. And this, if you're really sitting, if the meditation is a good meditation, it brings about a balance, equanimity, equilibrium, a balance. And this balance, this body relaxed, in this balanced, leaves the mind, leaves the consciousness, free to watch the process. See? Free to isolate itself from the process. Free to discover itself out of the process. We've been very busy trying to discover ourselves in the process and fulfill ourselves in the process. What you've got to do is fulfill yourself outside of this particular process, of the phenomenal process, the becoming. See? In this balance, this equanimity, we can see the automatic movements of Prakrit in her mindless, unconscious play. Consciousness is in the realm of Purusha, not Prakrit. Prakrit is mindless. Observing all of this within ourselves, Purusha slowly begins to extricate himself. The ideal of this Samkhya is to stand back and to witness oneself without feeling and without judgment. Because here, this thing of a long thing is not short, otherwise you're judging. And a yellow thing is not green, why should I interfere? Without any personal feelings about it. Nothing personal in the observation. One is simply watching. And it takes a while. And it is a meticulous task. See, it takes lots of practice. It takes lots of patience. Patience with oneself and patience with detail. In this watching, in this process, one discovers that emotions run away with the Purusha. You can see it. That's how you lose yourself, huh? See? Emotions of any kind create movement. And in the movement of Prakrit, because that's where the movement is, in the movement of Prakrit, because Purusha has not yet extricated himself enough, Purusha's lost. Takes you out of yourself, as they say. You are either in yourself or you are out of yourself. Right? Do you know when you're in yourself? Do you know when you're out of yourself? Do you know where you are right this moment? Unless, of course, you are neither in yourself or out of yourself. See, and then we're right back to Rinzai, right? Sure. Right. In order not to move out of oneself, see, so there's no movement out, you know. The mind must be empty of all images. Images, I didn't say empty, there's something else. Energy then just comes back to the self. So one learns, you know, voluntarily to return to that which is fundamental, which is the source. And returning to this fundamental, we can see what has been so carefully hidden and so disguised in the realms of instinct and intuition and sex. In this look, and it can be a very piercing look of Purusha into himself, and at the same time into the movement of Prakrit. And then one sees that nirvana is samsara and samsara is nirvana. Of course, you realize that in my doing this thing with the Samkhya, that I threw in a little bit of Zen. You know? Because as the old saying is, into every life a little Zen must fall. And now, may the peace and the power that passeth all understanding hold us and keep us in the love of the Christed consciousness while we are seemingly separate one from another. And I do thank you very much.
If you find Lola's talks valuable, more will be posted in weeks to come.